researcher and policy advisor. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Mugo.
Thank you. Welcome, Lillian.
I want to take you through a rundown of questions that parents are asking. For most of them, their children went back to school this week. That is starting Monday, others on Tuesday. So some of the questions that are coming in are, for example, my child is scared to go back to school. How can I help him feel at ease?
Yeah, it is true, and they have a legitimate reason why one should be afraid of getting back to school because of infections. They know that COVID-19 is causing death, and we know that children, especially younger ones, are afraid and are even traumatized by the mention of death. We know that many households have lost lives, and even that since schools had opened, the grade 4, standard 8 and form 4, from September down to December, many household infections came as a result of children getting to school. So when a child is afraid of getting back to school, what is very critical, first of all, is to provide actual information and accurate information. What does it mean and what should they do? They should understand that COVID is going to be with us for a long time. And just like many other things, dangers are around us all the time, but it is possible to keep safe and provide information using a language they can understand, they can connect with, on what they should do. When they get to school, they wash their hands, they keep their masks on, they don't hug or greet their friends, even when they really are fond of them. They don't get close to each other, even while outside during break. This information, Lydian, is very important because we communicate to adults, but children need a language they can identify with and to understand that getting to school is the only way, because they need to continue with life and continue learning.
That's
but
right.
They can
very
do
well.
things to protect themselves and protect those that they're living with.
Right, very well. But there's, in a lot of group chats, especially for the younger, for parents of the younger children, there's been concerns. Some parents actually saying that for the younger children, they exchanged masks with their friends at some point. At some point, they took off the masks. So in terms of precaution, once you hand over the child to the school, how to follow that app when they come back home so that you can ensure that they actually follow to the letter what they're supposed to do. Keep your mask on, wash your hands frequently. How to go about that?
First, Lillian, the protocol for schools is very clear and it is written down. And it is one thing to have a protocol, but it is another thing to have, first of all, to facilitate that these protocols are implemented. I know, for instance, that many schools are struggling with water. Others are struggling with a distance. We know that the desks that were promised by government have only reached around 14 to 15%, and 85% of schools have not received any extra desks. So there has to be commitment, whether from government, whether from the school itself, to ensure that there is facilitation, there is water, there is soap. Children are, and then the next thing is surveillance and supervision. Teachers have to be very strict on this, but at the same time, passing information all the time so that children understand. I know for sure that a child even of 3 years old, when they are made to understand and given information of their level, they would be able to understand why a mask is important. You cannot exchange it. The next thing now, the biggest gap is a home protocol. What does a child do when they get back home? We know that more than 85% of our children are in day schools. So they'll be in school and they'll get back home to that elderly, to that sickly caregiver or guardian or parent. So the Ministry of Health, I think, also needs to develop protocols for the home When the child comes home, for instance, that the first stop is where there is water and soap. The next thing is to remove the clothes they were putting on and the books and put them, if possible, outside. And then the next thing is that the elderly at the household and the children themselves, as much as possible, avoid close contact, keep masks on when you have to be close to each other. The home protocols have not been communicated, and I think this is a big gap that the Ministry of Health needs to address in order to protect the minority.
Very well. In terms of excitement, for the pupils, because they were home for a year, and a lot of them were really looking forward to going back to school, but things are different now as regards the school environment. Somebody asking, my child is not part of the same group as his close friends returning to school and is feeling even more isolated. How can he feel more connected to his classroom and his friends? In some schools, classes have been divided. Lunch areas are divided into small groups, PE as well. So a lot of changes, not what they're accustomed to. So how to guide them through this new set of rules and how to adapt?
What is important is to help children understand that we cannot continue normally the way we used to, but that there is hope, that if we take good caution now, we take good precaution, follow what we are being told, maybe in another month, a few months or few years, we may get back to normal. But also schools need to offer social support. We know children, especially those that are above the age of 8 years to 16 years, having close friends and confidence is a very important thing for them. They are developing their identity. They are defining their relationships, and they are defined also by their relationships. So how do we facilitate communication without contact, for instance? We know groups, some classes have been shifted here and there. How do we use the outside space for children to interact without close contact? That social support for children provides a lot of emotional security, and teachers really are trained. Every teacher in this country, Lillian, has been trained in psychology and in sociology. There are many different simple methods that teachers can use to ensure that children are communicating with each other, they don't feel isolated, but at the same time that communication still follows especially the procedure and the protocol of distance, that you can still communicate as well to someone who is 3 meters away and chat and laugh without having to stand close to each other. That you still can talk. You may have to talk a little louder because you have the mask on, but just the way you are hearing them, they are also hearing you, and really you can interact. So this social enhancement and provision of the emotional security to children is very key at this time.
Very briefly, as we close now, Daktari, anything we should look out for as parents, as our children transition back into schools, anything that we should look out for?
The one thing we know is that exposure is much higher. So when a child is coming back home from school, parents must understand that it cannot be business as usual, because we know there are many grandparents now getting the community infection, because children will actually, most of them, maybe over 95%, will not even know they have the disease, but they'll get it and they'll bring it home. So it is important now at this point to figure out how to get families reorganizing themselves, maybe using more of outer spaces. If you have windows, keeping the windows more open. If you have an elderly person who sleeps with a child, reorganizing that so that you don't sleep next to each other. Now we have to tilt the balance to focus on the minority that is vulnerable.
Right.
Because we know that closing schools and locking down learning also has a longer term impact on society that we all have to contribute to avoiding.
And I thank you so much for your time. I've been speaking to Dr. John Mugo. He's the Executive Director of the Zizi Afrique Foundation. Many thanks for that. We're taking a break. We're back with more.